Hi. Hi, my name is Angie and welcome to my channel. I'm here to document a couple of things. One, my journey on the carnivore diet and the success I've had so far, and then my continued success as I reach my goal. And also for me and my husband Jose, to document our journey in self-sustainability and being able to raise and process our own meat on our farm that we just bought. And so we want to document that kind of process as well and show what we're doing to take control of the food that comes into our household and what we're doing to source the best quality food possible. So a little bit about my journey. Like I said, my name is Angie, Angie DeJesus, and I now live in West Monroe, Louisiana, and just moved here from Texas and bought a beautiful home on just a little less than 10 forested acres. And my husband Jose and I just are literally still unpacking and setting out to try to set up a homestead. My weight loss journey actually begins at birth. I was always the fat kid. I was a chubby kid, grew up on a farm in East Texas. And then my weight really ballooned when at age 8, my mother married my stepfather and entered into what would be 15 years of horrible, abusive, enraged, chaotic family life. He moved us to the city, to a suburb of Dallas, and took me away from that support system that I had on the farm. And all of a sudden, our diet changed from being homegrown and canned foods in our own that we processed ourselves to being commercial foods. Like a staple on our dining room table was rice-a-roni or Velveeta shells and cheese and Wolf Brand chili, and we drank tea by the gallon, sweet tea. In fact, it was a chore in our house that we would make 2 gallons of sweet tea twice a day because we went through that much of it. And a lot of French fried foods. We had the big Fry Daddy, so everything was deep fried in cooking oil, and there was not a lot of fresh food, even produce in our house. Everything was processed and came out of a box. A lot of Swanson TV dinners, a lot of microwave burritos, that kind of thing. So during that time, my weight ballooned, and there was a couple of things going on there. Not only was there within the family, I was being subject to severe physical and mental and emotional abuse, neglect by my parent. My mother wouldn't protect me. She wouldn't stand up to her husband. And then I was at the hands of sexual abuse, not only within the family on both sides, my father's side and on my mother's side, but also not just at the hands of parents, but at the hands of other family members within the family. And so I constantly was in a state of fight or flight. Everyone in this family on both sides are either drug addicts, alcoholics, or criminals in prison. And my coping was food. That's how I coped with the abuse that I was being subject to. I was, part of that abuse was being ridiculed because of my weight. And, anyway, I, survived. I got out at a young age and got away. And, so here I have totally just, I have no sense of what food is, or, I was just living on what I could get kind of thing. Ended up, getting married and having a child, and, that husband passed away when my child was a baby, and, proceeded to raise her on my own. but I decided I wanted a different life. So I was doing what I could to get my life in order. I completed my education, got a bachelor's degree at the time, and was raising a kid and going to school. And it took me several years to get that bachelor's degree. I was bankrolling my education. I didn't do student loans, because I just didn't want the debt. And I was working jobs to try to support this kid, and then working a second job to pay for the daycare so that I could work to support the kid and try to get some education and get ahead in the world. And then my weight just went up. It just went up and up and up. And so I was about 665 pounds in my early 30s. And in 2003, I had worked at a hospital, and one of my best friends there was a doctor, and he and his wife were very kind, and they encouraged me to do something about my weight. And they ended up putting my name in for the Dr. Phil show. Dr. Phil was looking to do a weight loss program. It was going to be like 2 to 3 years long. It was called the Ultimate Weight Loss Challenge. And so we were one of the first, before The Biggest Loser, we were one of the first reality TV shows. And so they put my name in, and I went through the whole process, which took about 6 months. And next thing I know, I'm one of the chosen. And so I proceeded so we taped from 2003 to 2005. And the show actually aired from 2004 to 2006 every Monday and Tuesday. And I went through the process, and I was following Dr. Phil's plan, which was a diet book. And it was restrictive in calories and restricted in portions. And it was high in carbohydrates, a lot of grains and yogurt and berries, and not a lot of protein, hardly any oil or fats. It was just not a healthy diet. Certainly not for someone like me. It was just very calorie restrictive. And then we had trainers that trained us. And my trainer was, God bless him, he just saw it like The Biggest Loser. He was just trying to hurry up and get me to burn as much as possible. That's what they wanted me, was just to burn it. So I was starving myself, and I was working out 3 to 5 hours a day. And I literally had no life. And my daughter never saw me, because I worked out in the morning, I worked all day, then I had to work out in the evening. And then I had to fly to LA all the time to tape these shows. Or when we were in Dallas, they were following me around with a camera. In my life, I had a camera in my refrigerator, a camera in my kitchen, a camera in my living room, and just always had a camera in front of my face. And my whole life was being recorded, and it just got a little overwhelming. I was not at the finale, even though I did lose quite a bit of weight, starving myself. I was not at the finale because a few weeks prior, my trainer wanted me to ramp it up and have a super weight loss goal. So I went on a fast, and at the same time, he started pushing my workouts and had me attempt to leg press 400 pounds and then videotape it. And I blew out my L4 and L5, which ended up putting me in the hospital for several weeks. My daughter almost ended up in foster care because I couldn't care for her. I ended up in a wheelchair. It was a very hard and stressful time. And so, no, I wasn't at the finale. I walked away from the show. I walked away from a radio show. I walked away from some TV shows I was offered. And I just walked away from Hollywood altogether. And I was just really disappointed with the whole experience. The only thing I can say I totally got out of it was that Dr. Phil's counseling for him and Robin, and they really instilled with us that we have the power within ourselves to take ownership of our situation and to reach out and put faith without works is dead. So to put works to what we were believing, and to go and get therapy, and to treat the mental and the emotional, and to go and look at the physical, that everything that we were dealing with, mental, emotional, and physical, were all symptoms of a root cause, and to really press in and find out what that was. So I walked away with that, and I really felt empowered. And the first time in my life, I didn't have that victim mentality anymore. I took ownership. So anyway, I proceeded to continue my education and work. It was not the healthiest lifestyle. I was doing the Weight Watchers and point system, and again, portion control, eating things I probably shouldn't be, but it was on the list because it was so many points. And I thought I was doing right. And anyway, I got down by starving myself to about 350, 370 in that range. I kind of fluctuated. And I kind of felt like that was my plateau. And so I kind of stayed there for quite a couple of years. The doctor said I was probably thinner, actually lighter, if I had cut off all the skin that I had, loose skin hanging around my body, my belly, legs, and arms. But that was where I was. And I was content. I was pretty much, because at least I wasn't, 665 pounds, and I was more active. I had more of a life. Well, my daughter graduated high school, and by 2012 had moved on to further her education, and she had gotten married, and I found myself alone. Now, this was tough because I had totally separated myself from my family for good cause. So I didn't have that. They were never a support system, but I just had to get away from all the abuse, all the neglect and the abuse and all the isms, the alcoholism, the drug addictions. I had to get away from it all. And so I was really alone, and I had a hard time for several months. I was on a pity party for about 4 months. And then I really started looking at it like all of a sudden I had extra income because I wasn't caring for a teenager, supporting her anymore. She had started her own life. And I started going to the pool every morning and every afternoon, and just spent a lot of time in the pool at the local fitness center. And then I started taking ownership of my life. I was still doing the point system, but now I was like spending all weekend prepping. I would shop, and then I would spend all day. I would shop on Friday night or early Saturday morning, and then spend all day Saturday prepping and getting ready for the week, and have my little lunch kits with my portion controlled. Everything was weighed and measured, and I put in my point system, my little app, and I took pictures, and I'm a good patient, man. I did it. And so I just wasn't feeling good. I did not feel good. Had brain fog a little bit. I started having a little bit of anxiety, and we kept saying, oh, it's because you're empty nester or you're premenopausal, is what I was told. So I was doing everything my doctor told me to do, and it just seemed like it wasn't getting better. It was getting worse. In 2012, I married my love of my life, Jose, my best friend for many, many, many years. And now he was going to be my husband, which was the greatest thing I think that ever happened to me in my whole life. Anyway, he had been supportive for so many years and saw my struggle from the outside, but now we were married, and he saw it from the inside. And so Jose just stepped up to do everything he could to help me. And at that time, this doctor that I was seeing put me on, he said, well, you've got hypothyroidism. And he put me on synthetic steroids or synthetic thyroid medication. It made me psychotic, literally psychosis, in the hospital within 2 weeks. They quickly identified it, and they said, okay, you can't take the synthetic, you have to take the real thyroid. So I took the real stuff. Same thing, psychotic. So they said, you can't take this stuff. And so it made me wonder if I even really had thyroid problems. I mean, the number said that my thyroid was really, really slow, and I had some adrenal fatigue. What I learned later is I had mitochondria disease, but because my mitochondria was damaged. But anyway, I couldn't take anything to help my thyroid. And so I fired that doctor, and I ended up going to another doctor who was a pretty progressive clinic in my town. And I met with him, and he said, I know what your problem is. He hands me a copy of Forks Over Knives, handed me a copy of the China Study, and handed me a copy of Dr. Dean Ornish's book about heart disease, and said, read these, watch this video, read these 2 books, and come back and see me in 2 weeks with a book report. And so I did. I showed up, and he said, okay, we're going to start this. You're going to be vegan. So he took out salt, absolutely no salt, no oil, absolutely no oil, no fat, no dairy, no animal proteins, none of any kind. I was only doing whole grains, legumes, vegetables, fruits, nuts, seeds, and herbs. And that was my diet. And I was allowed to eat as much as I want, but I had to fill everything with green vegetables, leafy greens. So I would have a sweet potato, and I would have like 2 pounds of broccoli. Or I would have a little, half of a cup of brown rice with tons of steamed vegetables on it, but no salt, no nothing. And I was doing it, and I lost a little weight, but then I started having sugar problems, insulin problems. And in 2018, I started having, like, I just had plateaued. All of a sudden I was a diabetic, and I started having skin issues, and I broke out with these rashes all over my body. They would red, it looked like radiation burns, and they would blister up with these big clear blisters that would pop, and it would be sticky stuff. They would be on my eyes. They would glue my eyes shut, around my nose. I still have scarring from them. I had them all over my body. I got to where I couldn't wear a brassiere because it would just it was like raw. It would burn. I would peel my clothes off and just cry. I could no longer use hot water. I couldn't hardly use any soap. I couldn't be out in the sun. I had to be in the cool and the dark, and I got to where I couldn't even wear anything that touched I had to wear like shifts and underwear. I could no longer go in the office. I had to work from home. And then it got to the point I couldn't even work at all. I couldn't sit because I would just stick to the chair, and these blisters, when I busted them, would just spread all over my body. And so I went to the doctor, and he said, oh, well, you need to watch Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead. This guy had the same thing, and he juiced and got rid of it. Well, I started juicing just green stuff. And so during that time, when I was, living the vegan diet, Jose and I were spending a lot of money trying to, provide me with produce. We turned around and we bought a farm. And we had already been gardening in our house to provide the greens I needed. But then we got to support this habit. So we bought a farm, and we had been growing stuff and raising chickens and eggs and selling them. But also at the time, we were growing a lot of produce so I could juice it all. So now I was juicing, just living on juice of green produce and a beet. And it was we called it swamp water. And it was greenish, olive, mucky, brownish green color. And it tasted horrible. It was disgusting. And I would choke it down and almost gag. And I did 3 32-ounce cups like that a day. And that's what I was living on. And I was kind of losing weight, but I was getting sicker and sicker and sicker. And then I started having mental problems, like a fog. I couldn't function. I couldn't remember. They thought I had Alzheimer's. They thought I had Parkinson's. Then I started they said I had MS. They said I had fibromyalgia. Finally, I had all this testing done, and they said, you have cutaneous lupus, and you have MS markers, and you're basically going to die. So I was really had accepted it. I was so terrified. I cooked meat for my husband at night, but I was terrified to eat it. And to me, they had brainwashed me to think that meat and oil and fats were the problem. And I was struggling to survive. It got to where I couldn't work at all, not even at home. We sold the farm, sold all our equipment, put everything we owned in storage, and proceeded to have to rent in this tiny little apartment. So we're in this tiny apartment. By 2021, I was 500 and, well, I was almost 600 pounds. I had gotten back up to almost 600 pounds. So I'd gone from the mid 300s all the way up to 600 pounds. I was a diabetic now. I had to use a walker I couldn't take care of my hygiene anymore. My husband had to do it for me. I couldn't shower by myself. I sometimes would go to a recliner, but I would break recliners. I couldn't cook for myself. It was not good. And Jose was working to take care of us and all my medical bills, and he was working long hours, like 14, 16-hour days, 6, sometimes 7 days a week. And it was not life. We were not living, and something had to change. Well, I'd gotten really sick. I mean, I broke out bad, just a total flare up. I was in pain. Just sitting and the air touching my skin hurt. So I ended up in the hospital. This doctor really thought I had radiation burns. They actually had me tested. It wasn't radiation. And he was like, looking at my diet, he goes, well, you follow a really good diet. And so it's not your diet. But I want you to go to, because we ran out of money. We couldn't afford health insurance, and we were just out of money. So I got on at the Grayson County Community Clinic in Sherman, Texas. And I went in there, and there was a doctor there, Dr. Paul Mabry, who actually had this thing called the Meat Club. And he said to me, I think he thought I was an ethical vegan, because he said to me, he said, if you'll trust me, he goes, I'll change your life, but you're going to have to eat meat. And he didn't want to offend me. And I was like, I'm not a tree hugger. I grew up on a farm. I know how to process meat. I like meat, but it'll kill me. He's like, no, it won't. Change the way you're thinking. And he said, if you give me 30 days, I'll change your life. And so he took his prescription pad out, and he wrote out on there, I want you to do beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. And he wrote down what beef was and ruminant animals. And he wrote down what butter was and ghee and the other fats I could use, like lard or bacon fat or tallow. And then the bacon and the pork fat and pork belly. And then the eggs, the best quality eggs. He said I could have extra sharp cheddar cheeses or cheeses like Parmesan, fresh grated Parmesan, not processed Parmesan, or fermented cheese like feta or blue cheese. He did allow that. And that I could have coffee with heavy cream in it and butter, but he wanted me to learn how to use or how to make bulletproof coffee if I was going to have coffee. No artificial sweeteners. And he said that I could have like fish. And if I decided to fry something, I could only do an avocado oil or coconut oil and to only use those sparingly. So he did have the main BBBE and then some other things that I could have on occasion just to spice it up a little bit. And he told me about the salt that he wanted me to incorporate in my diet, which was shocking. But he said, give me 30 days. So the first 3 days were a little tough. Middle day of day 3 is when the diarrhea stopped. It was tough. In not being mobile and having to use a walker to get to the bathroom, there were so many close calls. It was a nightmare. But on day 4, the morning of day 4, I woke up. It was still kind of dark outside, and I sat on the edge of the bed. And having been pretty much a bedridden person, Bill Knott from Homestead How will know exactly what I'm talking about. You sit on the edge of the bed, and you got to figure out how to get up. And you got to muster up yourself in order to get up and get to the toilet. This morning, I threw my legs over the bed. I was half asleep, and I just walked right into the bathroom without my walker. And I was shocked. I was on the potty yelling for Jose, going, hey, look, I made it here without my walker. And so that did something in me. So that week, from that day on, I started cooking for myself and I was able, because a lot of the inflammation had went down, I was able to take care of myself. So what I ended up doing was getting an office chair and rolling into the kitchen and cooking for myself. And at first my meals were bacon and eggs in the morning, and then a little bit of hamburger meat with a little bit of hamburger meat with eggs and maybe a little cheese. And then at night, just some meat. And I was also cooking for Jose now. So I would cook enough meat for both of us, and then I would cook. Jose is a very simple palate. Being a Puerto Rican, he just wanted a little rice and maybe a little beans or veg, and I would fix that for him. And so we started having meals together again, and I was cooking them, which was a big weight off of his shoulders because he cooked all day as a chef. And then he came home, and to have someone have prepared a meal for him, it did wonders for our marriage. And then, so I was at 565 when I started. By February 14th, so that was 565 in December 2021. By February 14th, I was down to 500 pounds. And I'd already dropped like 65 pounds in like 2.5 months. And I told my husband, I said, I think I want to go back to work. Now, I couldn't drive yet. I did try to drive. I just wasn't comfortable yet because I was still so big. But I said, I want to go back to work. And my industry that I worked in was predominantly virtual now. And I thought I would come in at the entry level. I would have to kind of start over, but I had the experience. I could get my foot in the door. So I sent out some resumes. And by March of that month, so February 2022 is when I said I wanted to go back to work. Within a month, I had a company that wanted to hire me. And then I started back to work, and it made it easy. By this time, I was eating like 2 meals a day. It just happened because I became satiated. So I would eat my meat and eggs, maybe with a little cheese in the morning, brunch. And then in the evening when Jose came home, I would have my second meal. And I was doing very, very, very well. And I got my clarity back. The fog lifted, the depression lifted, the psychosis lifted, the anxiety, and I was back on it. I was as sharp as a tack, and Jose was still working a lot, but now I was working, and we were stockpiling money, trying to regroup our savings, and I started, like, in my spare time writing articles on my industry and contributing to certain periodicals, online periodicals and stuff. And some people took notice that we're in the industry. And next thing I know, I've got this headhunter who specializes in the industry I work in, recruited me to go to work for this other company. And I got the job. And all of a sudden, I went... It was in, I got recruited in December of 2022. So I started back to work May of 2022. By December of 2022, I'd already got promoted by another company and taken way up. And so in my industry, when I left, I was in lower management. And now all of a sudden I had jumped way up, and I was now in a position where I ranked higher in my career than people who were my superiors when I was in the industry before. And I had surpassed them. And I hadn't even been working for like 4 years in the industry. So God did a wonderful thing. And I think getting my life back did a wonderful thing. And so I ended up, and through all this process, also because I had benefits, I started getting it back into therapy. And I was really addressing some issues, things that started coming up. I think when you're sitting alone in the dark, your thoughts torment you, past, and having to let go of the past and heal some things and denounce some things. And I think a lot of it helped in knowing that a lot of my abusers were dead. They were gone. They were no longer on the earth. They were worm bait. And so I didn't live, I think, in that flight or fight fear kind of thing anymore because they were gone. And I actually took it upon myself at one point to go visit a couple of their graves and spit on the graves, and walk away and just say, okay, I'm done. I'm leaving that behind. So, I got this job and I was promoted, and it was like my dream job. If you're in this industry, this position, they are very few and far between. And it was like my dream job. And I have, to to this day, this excellent manager who's a mentor, and she went up the ranks like me. And so she has really mentored me in this. And I shared with her a little bit about my weight loss journey. And so they're very supportive, the group that I work with. And so I had this additional support system that I didn't have before come in just through my job. And so January of 2022, I started actually onboarding through this company. And by January of 2023. So by March of 2023, after having a few months of paychecks, and Jose and I had already been stockpiling money for a year, I just turned to Jose and I said, I think I'm ready for home ownership. And he's like, great, because this apartment was not working. It was a tiny 700 square foot apartment. It was noise upstairs, noise on the side. Things were always breaking. Maintenance was always in my apartment. And I was trying to work a corporate job and it was just not working. So I ended up, I just told Jose we need to start looking. And we knew when we started to decide we're going to buy a place, we knew we wanted another farm. And this time it was going to be more animal based. We were going to raise our own meat and source and process our own meat and know where our food was coming from. And the things that we grew would be to feed the animals or to sell at a farmer's market to support the farm. And so we spent hours having a conversation and mapping out our goals and our desires. And then I went and hired a demographic expert. And we actually wanted to go to South Central Florida, but that was not having it because of cost. And insurance issues in those states. And we knew we didn't want Texas because of taxes. And even though we love Texas, the cost of property is expensive, and the property taxes are crazy in Texas because we don't have a state income tax. So we were like, okay, we need to buy a retirement or forever home. And we knew we wanted to be in at least a subtropic environment, so we'd have a longer growing season. And so I hired a demographic expert, and back and forth for weeks, we came up with all these questions, all the boxes that had to be checked. And finally, I got the spreadsheet, this algorithm, this spreadsheet, and it brought us to northern Louisiana. And this is it. Jose and I visited the area. We decided, this is where we want to live. And we started looking for a property. And that was in April of 2023. And then within a few weeks, a few trips, we had found the property we wanted, a beautiful home with a big kitchen and lots of land. And this is the one we wanted to purchase. So we put in an offer and it was accepted. And so then started the hard part. So this is where the challenge entered in for me. So now we have everything we owned in storage. All of our old farming and chicken supplies, our meat processing, all our canning, and all of Jose's chef stuff, catering stuff. And we had all this in storage. And we're in this small rental, and so we have to bring everything out of storage into the house and start going through it and purging lots of things. I mean, we still had 2 or 3 sets of dishes and 2 or 3 sets of silverware from his and mine and ours. And so we just had and books. And I had a lot of vegan materials. I had vegan cookbooks and books about plant-based stuff. All that stuff went in. I wouldn't even let Jose take it to the donation center. I threw it in the trash. So we purged so much stuff. And so my life became crazy. So then I went from being able to manage my private world to all of a sudden, I just had to get through this 30 days to closing. And I had to hurry up and get ready to make this major move from one state to another. And so we were literally unpacking all these. We lived with boxes up to the ceiling like a maze through this whole place. And we would unpack one box at a time and go through it and reorganize it and get rid of stuff and throw stuff away and then keep and relabel the box and then move it over to this room. And so finally we got it down to everything we own fit in a 26-foot truck. And we moved here, But during that time, I was struggling to stay carnivore. Things started creeping in. I would cook a meal to make sure Jose had food when he came home. And I would go to cook for me. I was just so tired because we were not sleeping good. We were trying to jump through hoops for the title company and everything you have to do to buy a house and still work a full-time job, which I was still onboarding for this new job. I was still in training and I was doing the job. And it was all coming on once, and I would just sit down and just eat what I made for Jose. Just a little, I would just, a little bit of meat, a little bit of rice, and we were trying not to fill our freezers, and so we were just trying to keep everything in our refrigerator and just buy very minimal, and it was a struggle. I started eating a lot of low-carb wraps with lunch meat and cheese because it was easy. That was my meal during the day. Just some mayonnaise on a low-carb wrap with some turkey or ham and a piece of cheese. And, I'd eat hard-boiled eggs with butter on them. I just did what I could to survive, and I thought it's going to get better. It's just a season. We're going to get through this. So we ended up getting here, and there was a delay. We ended up having to stay in a hotel, and trying to eat hotel food was a struggle because we would get the steak from the steakhouse, and that butter they put on, that whipped butter, that's really margarine, and the gas they use to whip that butter is the same thing they use in Cool Whip. It's just not good for you. But I knew I would just scrape it off. I was just doing the best I could. I was eating packets of mayonnaise that I knew had soybean oil in them. I was just thinking, okay, if I get through the season. So in April, when we started looking for the house and found the house, I was 421 pounds. By June 16th, when we got in the house, I had gone up to 446. And so I kind of plateaued there. And I was still trying to stay on carnivore and stay on track, but still had some things in there I really didn't need to have, like, over the mayonnaise that I had in the hotel room. I was still eating that, and just regular shredded cheese, and which has got cornstarch coating or potato starch coating on it, and things that I knew that I didn't need to be doing. But I was just find my dishes. I still don't have plates. I'm still eating on paper plates, and we've been here 2 months. We think maybe we gave away all our dishes. But we are here, and now I'm ordering my Private World. And so finally we've got enough stuff unpacked. And at the same time, as soon as I moved here, I had to go back to work. I had 3 days off, and I had to go back to work, and I was still onboarding, and I'm still training in my job and still working full time. But at least now I finally got it established enough that I feel like I have control again of the rudder. I am the captain of my ship. So Jose helped me to go back, and we have 2 refrigerators, and we got everything organized in our freezers, and we found a butcher in our new area, and we found the local Sam's, and we stocked up. And now for the first time in months, I feel like I'm back in control. I have order in my Private World. I'm back on task. So now, like I weighed, I'm at 446, and that was a week ago. I haven't weighed this week. I don't even want to look. The other thing that happened is this week, I had bought the Element 4-pack of the 4 boxes, $150 worth of Element, and I started using it, and I broke out in rashes again, blisters. I was freaking out. And when I flipped it over and looked at the ingredients, there's stevia. I can't have stevia. It's a plant. And my doctor explained to me that eating plants for so long had given myself oxalate and salicylate poisoning. So if I go to eat a plant that I don't like, the stevia, anything green, it triggers it. Like I break out like almost immediately. And he said, Mom, I may not always be that way, but right now I am. And I need to stick to my carnivore plan. And that's where I'm at. I'm here. We've got this farm. And now we started the process of trying to clear land and figure out where we're going to put a greenhouse and where we're going to put our chickens and where we're going to put pigs and where we're going to put sheep and eventually get cows. And we've got a lot of work to do. And so, but the main thing is, and I have to love Jose for it, was like, all right, let's get in this house and set you up for success. And the rest will come. Let's just get you set up for success. And so that's where I'm at today. It's August 21st. I'm at 446 pounds and I'm back on track. And I'm doing everything that I know to do to order my private world, and hence this video to set up an accountability and a video recording of my journey and to show the world that this works for me. I don't think it's for everybody, but it works for me, and my body responds to this. And so I'm just going to move forward with this, and with this is my brass ring. And so I just encourage everyone to do you. Do what works for you. You know your body, and you know where it works for you, and this works for me. And so I appreciate your support, and God bless. Y'all have a wonderful day.